Welcome into another late night recording of the Nebraska Shoot Around podcast. I am your host, Jacob Bigelow, and joining me as always is Jacob Bigelow. Hanging in there, Jacob?
I am once again well caffeinated for some Nebraska Shoot Around after dark. This is definitely a little later than we planned, but the game we watched together this evening went a little longer than we expected as well. So here we are.
Yeah, typically I think we both like to rewatch the game, kind of go over it with a fine-tooth comb and take notes and highlight things and all that. We're going a little different with this time. We're going with a kind of a live reaction, fresh after watching Nebraska's 104-100 overtime loss at North Carolina State on Wednesday night. That was rough. They had so many chances to win that game. And obviously there's going to be a lot made of the officiating, and that was a huge part of it. But again, they had a chance to win at the end of each of the first three overtimes and couldn't get the deal done.
They also had a chance to put the game away when they were up 14 with 9 minutes left in the game, and then all hell kind of broke loose after that. So
why don't we, I guess, probably dive right into this and start there. They back and forth first half, whatever, they go into the locker room with a 1-point lead, and they come out and knock down 3 of their first 5 threes to build the lead and then stretch it out from there. And like you said, they were up 61-47 midway through the second half, and you're feeling good about the way they're playing. Keisei Tominaga coming off the bench, providing a spark. They were getting stuff, again, production from Alonzo Verge, Bryce McGowan's, Derek Walker again. And then the dreaded Nebraska scoring drought showed up once again. And they went over 4 minutes without scoring a point, surrendering a 14-0 run. And man, it was rough during that stretch. There was a lot of trying to do too much off the dribble, with NC State kind of packing in the gaps and making life difficult for them. There were a lot of contested jump shots that didn't go down during that stretch. And at the end of it, you've got Jericho Helms hitting a 3 to tie it right in front of the NC State bench in that corner. And after that, you can see Latmayan was frustrated with his teammates, just kind of his reaction after the ball went in. He was the one that closed out there and contested the shot. And then as Fred Hoiberg called the timeout, the NC State guys kind of start celebrating, jumping around, woofing, because they're over by their bench already. And Mayan starts to walk back to Nebraska's end of the court. And just for some reason, instead of going around, shoves Helms out of his way. And then Cam Hayes comes in from the backside and shoves Mayan. And then you see the Nebraska bench running over, multiple guys kind of getting into it, got a scuffle. So things have completely derailed at that point. And you mentioned we watched this together. We went to a sports bar, so we did not have the sound on for a lot of this, which, based on what I was seeing on Twitter during the game, that was probably a good thing for our sake, considering the way that the game was called. And also, it was a remote broadcast. The crew was not in Raleigh. So in times like that where you're wondering, okay, what is going on? There's all kinds of reviews. You got ejections. You got a fight. They had no idea what was going on during that stretch.
Yeah, I went back. One of the first things I went back and found was the clips from right around that moment. There's a point where one of them says they think Verge got ejected. They said Kobe Webster got ejected, which just did not happen. They
went the entire second half putting up a graphic showing that Kobe Webster and Cron McPherson had both been ejected. That neither one of them, yeah.
And they had not. They had not been ejected. Kobe, that game went on for so long that if you ask the commentary team, Kobe Webster went from being ejected to coming back in the second and third overtime, making baskets down the stretch. I mean, that was my running line on Twitter tonight was this game had a little bit of everything. And it really and truly did. I thought I had seen everything in my time, whether it be my time with the program, my time as a fan, or even just as an observer. I thought I had seen everything. And then this game tonight just found a way to take the absolute cake in so many ways. mean, I understand the frustration, from Lat, but you don't need to give the shoulder shove walking back down the court. Get back to your huddle. Fred Hoiberg called the timeout right when the shot went in. Get back to your huddle, regroup, just try to, next play, next possession, don't, and I mean, probably the best thing to come out of that, we got the clip of Trey McGowan scootering down the court to try to defend his teammates. He's heart and soul of the team, even when he's on a scooter, hustling down the court. But I mean, that game, everything just was already trending downhill. And then that was just the icing on the cake.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Eduardo Andre and Oleg Koyanet also hustled down court to get into the action, and they got ejected. Neither one had played at that point. Obviously, Koyanet, I think at this point is injured anyway, but so it ejected those two along with Mann and Hayes for NC State. So 4 ejections in total after all that. And then once the dust finally settled, they kind of regrouped and they went out there and started playing ball again. Bryce McGowan took to the rim and scored at the basket to finally end the drought. And at that point, it was just kind of back and forth the rest of the way. Neither team was able to really take control, and Nebraska had a chance to win this in regulation. They got a stop, and Verge took it coast to coast for a go-ahead layup with 16.6 to play. Going back the other way, NC State sent a ball screen for Darian Seabron, who was the absolute star of the night. And Derek Walker tried to extend his hedge a little too far and fouled him in the bonus. So he goes to the line and hits both to tie the game with 7.2 to go. Actually, at that point, he split them to tie the game with 7.2 to go. And Nebraska had one last look. They got the ball to Verge, pushed it ahead. He got all the way to the basket, looked to attack and finish with the left hand, and defender comes down and whacks him on the forearm, clear as day. And they did not blow their whistle. And you can see every unbiased view of the play shows it's clear foul. And obviously you hear let the players decide the game. That wasn't a little bump on the hip. He literally got his arm taken off trying to go up and finish it. So that's the biggest no call of the game. There were a lot of, I think, discrepancies in the way the game was officiated. We'll talk about another one in one of the later overtimes that really, I think, made a big difference. But ultimately, that one right there, Nebraska had a chance. They got all the way to the basket and just was not able to get the shot up. So we go to overtime there. That's, like you said, the 14-point lead spoiled. That was a big opportunity to run away at this game. They couldn't do it. So we go to overtime. They take the lead in overtime, and they kind of have control of the game. After in the first overtime, it was ugly. I think the first 10 shots were all misses, and NC State had a turnover in there as well. So you went 4 minutes without a single point in the first overtime.
There were 8 total points scored in the first overtime. There were
all of the last 45 seconds, basically.
Yep. There were 24 points scored in the second overtime, 12 total in the third, and 20 total in the fourth overtime. But like you said, the first overtime was ugly. I think no one made a shot for almost 3 minutes.
4 minutes.
Yep. It was just kind of a question of, all right, is this going to be, first team to score wins? Who knows what we're going to get? And then they finally broke through, but NC State just had an answer right away.
Both times. They took the lead. NC State answered, took the lead again. NC State answered. So that left Nebraska with the ball and 16 and a half seconds to go in a tie game. And Nebraska opts to walk the ball up, kind of run the clock down. They ran a little ghost screen action, which is where with Bryce McGowan's, where the screener acts like he's going to set the screen and then just kind of runs through. So just try to create confusion, maybe create either a driving lane or an opportunity for the kind of throwback pass. Verge, they run that play a lot. Verge very rarely actually looks for the throwback pass there. He's looking to get downhill most of the time and try to create his own look. But NC State did a good job of staying disciplined and cutting off the the driving lane. So he kind of dribbled over to the wing. Nothing really developed, and ended up having to settle for a contested 17-foot jumper at the buzzer that didn't go. So again, they had possession in a tie game, chance to run whatever play you want, and they did not generate a good look, nor did they hit the tough shot. So again, another opportunity to win the game. This time it wasn't on the officials. There was no foul call. There was no foul in the final 15 seconds there. So here we go, second overtime. Again, Nebraska built a 5-point lead with less than 2 minutes to play, but they went cold down the stretch and gave up 6 straight to NC State for them to take the lead, as Sebron hit a layup with 4.5 to go. And Nebraska got the ball into Derek Walker on the inbound, and he pitched it right back to Bryce McGowan, tried to get him the ball on the move, and NC State fouled him. So perfect. There's like 2 seconds left, and 2.4 left or something like that. Head into the line for the single bonus. Yes, that was a single bonus. In the second overtime, NC State had 6 fouls at that point. I did not keep track of what the final number was, but at one point the fouls were 14-6 in the second half. But anyway, sent Bryce to the line, knocks down the first. Then Kevin Keats called the timeout to ice the shooter, give him a chance and to think about it. Bryce comes back out after the break. Halfway down, that thing hit back rim, front rim, popped out. And so, again, another chance to win it, and they missed the shot. So we head to a third overtime. And again, Nebraska had the lead. This time they were up by 4 with less than 2 minutes to play. But again, they let it slip away. And this is the other call that I was talking about. Nebraska struggled to rebound the ball all night long, particularly in the second half and into the overtimes. And it showed up in a big way in the third overtime as Nebraska forced a miss. Wilhelm Breidenbach went up, tried to get the ball. Thomas Allen got his hands on it too, pulled it down, looked like a jump ball. One of the officials was signaling a jump ball. And here comes TV Teddy Valentine in to overrule the play and call it a foul on Wilhelm Breidenbach somehow.
Dread him, run from him. TV Teddy arrives all the same. And Thomas Allen, old friend Thomas Allen, you couldn't script it. You could not script it. Thomas Allen, who started the season off suspended, has hardly played most of the year, trying to find a place in the rotation at NC State. And it takes until the third overtime for him to even see the floor. And in the last 2 overtimes, who has the play to foul out Wilhelm on a big rebound where he's the smallest guy on the court and he's still finding a way to clean up the offensive glass, whether you like the call or not. And he has another big offensive rebound that we'll talk about later in the fourth overtime where he goes to the line to ice the game. You could not script it any better. I know to some people, you probably think Thomas Allen, he was at Nebraska like 5 years ago. And you're right, but he's still playing college basketball, and he found a way. One of the few former Huskers still playing college basketball found a way to stick it to Nebraska tonight.
He played 8 minutes and scored 5 points and was +8, had a steal in those 8 minutes, 3 or 4 from the free throw line, plus that one bucket that you mentioned. But and that was a big play too, because on the other end, Breidenbach had just converted the bucket to put them up 4 on a beautiful pass from Derek Walker. He drew a foul too and fouled out. I believe that fouled out.
Yep, that
Helms,
was the play.
Right?
Yep.
Who's their best perimeter shooter, and he missed the free throw. So instead of going up 5, you're still up 4, and you go down and get whistled for that foul. And now Breidenbach is on the bench. And remember, Eduardo Andre fouled out. Trey McCowan's obviously injured, not available. Latmayen ejected. Fred Hoiberg was running out of options in a hurry there. CJ Wiltshire fouled out at one point down the stretch too. So that hurt, not only because it put 2 points on the board when I believe Nebraska had the arrow.
They did. They did.
They did. Going their way. Yeah. So that's where we're at now. Instead of up 5 with possession, you're up 2 with a need for a bucket. And both sides actually went empty for a little bit there. But after a missed three by Tominaga, NC State got the ball and ran. And as we've seen too many times from this team, Nebraska did not stop the ball. And unfortunately, it was McGowan's, I believe, was the nearest defender there that had a chance, kind of got blown by. And that we'll talk more about that. That's kind of the biggest takeaway from this game. But it forced Derek Walker to slide over to contest the shot. He forced a wild miss that hit off the backboard, hit off the rim. But Walker's man, their big guy, Ebenezer Dowoona, was there for the point-blank putback to tie the game. So you go from up 4 to a tie game with 10 seconds left. And Nebraska, no heads down. All right, let's get the ball in. Quickly inbounded up to Bryce McGowan's up the sideline, and he basically had a one-on-one with Dowoona. So you got your best attacker going downhill against a big guy. Kind of did the jump through move and tried to reverse the ball, finished with his left hand. There may be a little bit of contact, but not anything like that's one where you don't call that in that situation. You didn't rake him on the arms, anything like that. That's a pretty good vertical challenge, and he just left the shot a little bit short. Fortunately, he went so fast that NC State got a look at the buzzer, but Breon Pass's three-pointer from the top of the key at the buzzer did not fall. So here we go, another overtime. Again, Bryce right at the rim, chance to go ahead there. And even before that, they had a 4-point lead, had a chance to build it to 5, build it to 6, build it to 7, and they could not make the free throw. They could not secure the rebound. So here we go to a fourth overtime. And at this point, again, I think they're gassed. Guys had played so many minutes on both sides. And right off the bat, Nebraska's playing zone at this point because they were just running out of bodies. And again, guys were exhausted. And NC State was a team that had not been able to make threes basically all night long. And first possession, three-pointer. So NC State takes the lead, whereas Nebraska had taken the lead basically to start each of the previous overtimes. This time NC State takes the lead, and they never trail again. And that was kind of how the game ended there. They pulled ahead by 4, and Nebraska had a chance to cut it to 2. Verge split the free throws instead of making both. And then I believe they had a chance to secure a rebound. Trying to find it there. Looking through my notes here. Yeah, they actually before that, Derek Walker had the little kind of like pick and roll lefty finish over Dowoona that he couldn't get to go. So that would have cut it to 1, missed it there. They forced a miss on the other end, but again, another offensive rebound allowed Sebron to end up scoring later in the clock after they ran down some more time. So you go from a chance to cut it to 1, tie the game, to now suddenly they're up 2 possessions again. And that was basically the game right there.
Yeah, I mean, just an absolute, heartbreaker, a tough loss that, they're definitely going to be, I mean, you can't dwell on it. You got a quick turnaround, going on the road again on Saturday for an early game against a team that, lost. They lost their Big Ten ACC Challenge game on the road in double overtime last night in Indiana. But I mean, it's just, they had, like you said, they had their chances, and, a theme we've talked about, for some other sports around here recently is the ability to finish games. And, this team, they're still, this was game number 8, they're still, not finding their footing, but I mean, Fred Hoiberg will even say they're, still getting used to playing with one another. They're, finding each other's tendencies, each other's grooves. But I mean, it was their first road game of the year. They still fought like hell. They still were in it until the end. And, you gotta admire the fight that they showed tonight. I'll admit from a fan perspective that I feel much better about this team after watching this game tonight than I did going into it. I mean, originally we had talked about, I was more focused about the Indiana game this weekend than I was about this game tonight. But, regardless of the L on the scorecard, there's some promising stuff that can still be taken away from this game. But once again, there's still questions to be had, mostly on one end of the floor compared to the other.
Well, at this, I think kind of just looking at this game, the weaknesses that we've identified and we've been talking about this whole time, they all reared their ugly heads in this game and ultimately led to the win, despite Nebraska playing well enough in some areas to get the win. So right out of the gate, the biggest problem early on, offensive rebounds. They gave up 24 offensive rebounds, leading to 19 second chance points for NC State. And we highlighted a few of the key ones late there that could have been the difference. Like if Nebraska secures a rebound in any of those moments, the game's probably over. And they simply could not do it. And there were so many possessions where NC State was throwing up bricks, and there was a lot of bad bounces. They went long. Derek Walker had a few swatted out of his hands from behind by just a taller player. And those are some of the ones that just kind of tough. And with man out, with Keon Edwards only playing 5 minutes or whatever it was, with Wilhelm Breidenbach's foul trouble, with Eduardo Andre not playing and then not available, Fred Hoiberg just didn't have a whole lot of options that could go out there and help kind of shore that up. And it just needed a little bit more fight. And yeah, they left it all out on the court. They played hard, but they didn't necessarily channel that in all the ways that they needed to. And the rebounding is the biggest difference there, because Nebraska had 17 offensive rebounds itself, but only converted into 7 second chance points. So you lose that category by 12. They outscored them by 6 in the paint, but NC State took 42 free throws and made 32 of them. Nebraska was only 11 for 15. So that right there, and Nebraska made 3 more threes than NC State did, despite both teams shooting under 25%. But, and again, +6 for in the paint, +9 from the 3-point line. But when you're -17 at the free throw line, that kind of offsets all of that. And that was enough for the 4-point loss.
It's not every day you see one opposing player take more free throws than the entire opposing team as a whole. But Darion Sebron tonight for North Carolina State finished with 39 points, which I believe the commentary team said was an ACC Big Ten Challenge single game record. He also finished with 18 rebounds and took 20 free throws, of which he made 17 of them to go along with his ridiculous 39 points on the night.
And he was, so those that aren't, he's a 6'7", 180-pound wing that was leading NC State in points, rebounds, assists, and steals. So this guy is at the top of every scouting report for anybody who's facing NC State tonight. Nebraska, I'm sure, knew what this guy was capable of, and they simply didn't have an answer. And this is the first game where Trey McGowan's absence truly showed itself. And really, I mean, that was one of the biggest differences in the game. Is you look at this roster, and that's one of the biggest weaknesses. They do not have anybody outside of Trey that really has plus foot speed laterally. They don't have anybody that can stay in front of guys that can really get downhill, shifty guys, athletic guys that are looking to put their head down and go. And Bryce McGowan's was a guy that drew the assignment on Sebron much of the night. And whether it was setting a ball screen or just straight up Sebron attacking, Bryce really could not stay in front of him all night long. And I don't really know what the counter is when that's happening, because who is the option that can actually step up and change that? We saw some zone late, and I think that did impact in some ways, but then that also makes it harder to rebound, an area where they were struggling as it was. And it's not like Nebraska had a lot of length in that 2-3 zone. I mean, you had like Keisei Tominaga down playing one of the wings down low. So that's kind of the biggest flaw with the roster right now that I see in its makeup at this point, because Keisei Tominaga, smart, puts in a lot of effort, not the quickest laterally. CJ Welcher, again, strong, can guard bigger wings, but really slow laterally.
Just was not his night tonight on either, either end of the floor tonight.
Yeah, we didn't mention that, but 0 for 7 from 3, I believe, finally stepped in and knocked down kind of a key mid-range jump shot, and then immediately fouled out on the next play. So, yeah, rough night for him, but that's just, I don't know what the answer is until Trey gets back for this problem. If you play against a team like NC State, where their best guy is someone like Sebron.
Or if you're looking ahead to Saturday and you go from a guy like Darian Sebron tonight to a first-team All-American in Trace Jackson Davis, who Fred Hoiberg said on the post-game radio show tonight, they might throw it inside to him 50 times on Saturday morning at Assembly Hall. That's where he gets his money. He's a first-team All-American. He has had 70 points in his past 2 games, a 43-point game at home against Marshall and a 30. I forget how many he had against Syracuse, but it was over 30. He lives inside the paint, and that's on both ends of the floor. Indiana, they pound it inside well, and they also defend inside well. So, kind of shifting to Saturday. Nebraska, they're gonna be looking at the same type of thing, going into Saturday against Indiana. That was what kind of killed them tonight. So
I actually thought in terms of just defensively, Nebraska, I did not think they were as lazy. I didn't think there were as many blown coverages, bad communication. I thought they were a little bit better in that area for long stretches of the game, but ultimately it didn't matter because they were so weak at the point of attack.
Yeah, I mean, going in, physicality was kind of a word that a lot of people threw around tonight. Was that they were going to have to, not be soft. They're going to have to go at NC State and be prepared to get punched in the mouth. And they just kind of, bullied probably isn't the wrong word, but that's kind of what Sebron did to him inside tonight. That's where he got all his points, was in and around the rim. He took 2 bad threes, but those were his only attempts at jump shots tonight. Yeah. And the rest of those points were at the charity stripe and inside.
Yeah. And so talk about kind of the weakness in this roster makeup, and where Fred Hoiberg, they made the conscious decision, all right, we're going all in on shooting, even at the expense of what that might do for our defense and our defensive flexibility. And the problem with that is, like, I'm okay with that strategy, but those guys have to hit shots. And you look tonight, again, Nebraska has 9 of 37 from 3. And man, they took some rough ones in some key stretches late in that game, and none of them went down. And you look at it, Keisei Tominaga was 5 of 11, and he can't really ask for much better than that for him. And we didn't record after the South Dakota game last time, but that was kind of the biggest story from that game, was Tominaga finally got loose, and he had 23 points off the bench, 8 of 11 shooting, including 5 of 6 from 3 in that game. So 23 points in 22 minutes after a really rough start to his career.
He started off hot tonight too. Yeah. He came out hot, made one in the corner, had a 4-point play from another corner. He came out hot tonight, but late in the game, he was just forcing. He was forcing hard late in the game. I felt like he did make the one where he hesitated at first. We're like, oh, like just immediately we're like, okay. And then that was one that went in. But he was forcing bad ones late. Bryce, I felt like, he made the one deep one, which felt like early on. It might have been later, but in a 4 overtime game, it felt early on. But the rest of his looks from outside were definitely like no shots. We've talked at length about, they brought guys here to make shots, and they're not going to reach their full potential offensively until at least some of them can all make shots at once in the same game.
And so Tominaga was 5 of 11. The rest of the team was 4 for 26. You look at Latmayan was 2 for 6 before getting ejected. Bryce was 1 for 5. CJ Wilcher, like I mentioned, was 0 for 7. And he took some tough ones again. Wilhelm Breitenbach was 0 for 3, and none of them were even close. And then Kobe Webster was 1 for 4. And the one make came at the end with 2 seconds left to cut it from 6 to 3. So it ultimately didn't matter. So that is the biggest problem right now. Like, if you can't stop the team on the other end, you got to trade 3 for 2. And right now they're trading 2 for 0 because they're firing blanks way more often than they're knocking down the shots. And that's ultimately the biggest thing that is going to have to change before Big Ten play starts, or this team is going to have a tough time competing because of the limitations that we talked about, especially until Trey McGowan gets cleared.
And we still don't know like how long that's going to be.
Yeah.
They could definitely use a guy like him going into Saturday. That's for sure. So considering one of his former teammates is kind of the head of the snake for Indiana and former Husker recruit Xavier Johnson.
I kind of feel bad for those guys. Would have liked for them to have the opportunity to kind of to go at it a little bit.
They kind of spent all summer tweeting back and forth at each other about how excited they were to face each other. I guess we can kind of do like a mini Indiana preview, not going to go too in depth into it. We've kind of mentioned Indiana off the cuff so far this year. We both watched at least a little bit of their game the other night against Syracuse up at the Carrier Dome. They lost in double overtime. But what did you see from Indiana that stood out aside from the obvious, which is, like we mentioned, the 6'9" first-team All-American and Trayce Jackson-Davis?
Yeah, well, that definitely was going to be my answer because I was trying to watch a few different games. I was flipping back and forth, and every time it feels like every time I flip back to that game, first thing I saw was Trayce Jackson-Davis dunking the ball. And I think he had 3 dunks just in the kind of the end stretch of the game since I turned the game on. And he had, what was it, like 8 or 10 dunks in that 43-point game, something like that.
Yep.
He's ridiculous. He's averaging 22 a game, 22 and 9, shooting 67% from the field. That is going to be a problem. And he is 6'9", 245. They play him next to Race Thompson, another kind of versatile, do the little things type of big at 6'8", 228. So I'm assuming, I think we'll see Derek Walker probably get the start on Jackson-Davis with Lat Mayen. Hopefully he can keep his head on straight and avoid what we saw happen against NC State. But I think we'll probably see Lat on Race Thompson and Derek Walker on Trayce Jackson-Davis. And it is going to be key that the perimeter guys do a much better job of staying in front of their man, because if Walker has to leave Jackson-Davis to contest a shot, that's going to be a dunk almost every single time, whether it's a putback, a tip slam, or a dump off for the easy finish. And that is going to be the key. You've got to stay in front of Xavier Johnson, who that's his best skill, is getting into the paint, finishing around the basket, and making plays for others. And they've got former Northwestern kind of sharpshooter Miller Kopp on the perimeter. So that's a guy that they're going to have to keep track of. Parker Stewart is hitting threes at a high rate as well, 47% on 5.5 a game. So they've got a lot of guys that Nebraska is going to have to account for. And they're going to have their best defensive game plan in terms of attention to detail that we've seen to this point, because you can't get caught in rotation constantly. You got to hold up at the point of attack, be able to account for those shooters, and hopefully prevent Trayce Jackson-Davis from getting the ball in his spots around the basket.
Yeah, and another thing that stands out to me, I've watched Indiana a couple of times this year, is just how they defend hard. I mean, and it's, probably a product of, who they've played this year, but they have the number 2 2-point percentage defense in the country on Ken Palm. They defend the paint really well. It helps to have guys like Jackson-Davis, Race Thompson, those guys inside who are just bouncy, long, and athletic. It felt like the few times that Trayce Jackson-Davis missed against Syracuse, Thompson was there to put him for a putback to, bail him out. They, like I've alluded to, previously, this team, they've got a lot of options. They've got a lot of different lineups they can throw at you. Xavier Johnson at the point, Rob Finney. I feel like Rob Finney's been in Indiana for 10 years. I feel like he was there when I was a student manager, but he's still there. He's a veteran, who can come in. He knows the Big Ten. He knows how to play in the Big Ten. And Kopp had his breakout game against Syracuse. He had kind of been trying to find a rhythm. I think he finished with 20 plus points, and that was his new career high. And he's played plenty of Big Ten basketball before too. I'm interested to see what the atmosphere is like at Assembly Hall. 11 a.m. game on a Saturday. Mike Woodson's first Big Ten game. It'll definitely, I think, be a little more hostile of an environment than we saw tonight in Raleigh, where it looked like the students showed up and no one else did. But regardless, it was going to be an interesting measuring stick going in regardless of the result tonight. But coming off a game that was frustrating in more ways than you could probably count, it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back, and their legs are going to be a big question after playing 4 overtimes and a quick turnaround where they're fly home late tonight, get back to Lincoln probably here in a couple hours. They got a rest day, a prep day, and then they're flying out Friday night. Probably not Friday night, probably like Friday midday, a flight to Bloomington. So that's a quick turnaround. This was their first game away from PBA tonight, but no breaks. Basketball never stops, as they like to say. You just keep going. So it'll be interesting to see what Saturday brings about for the Huskers.
Yeah, and be really interesting in particular with how Bryce McGowan's handles this turnaround and the heavy load. He played 58 minutes in that game. And we saw, again, we saw a lot of different things from Bryce. He had some spectacular stretches. He put the team on his back at different points, finished with 25 points, 9 rebounds. 25 or 24 points and 9 rebounds. Didn't make any plays for his teammates in this game, but also didn't turn the ball over. And he had a block in there as well. But we talked about the 3-point shooting, only 1 for 5. And he had a couple of stretches there. And we saw, again, we talked about this, where the lack of strength really hinders him when contact is allowed around the basket. And there were times where there was a little bit of contact there. We highlighted a couple of the opportunities he had late in the game. Particularly the one at the end of the 3rd overtime, I think it was, where the lack of strength really kind of showed itself. He also had some spectacular moves in the first half in transition, Euro steps, just like he had a tough and one. I think he had 7 points during a 9-2 run or something like that to help them get back in the game after they had fallen behind early. So we saw a lot of the good and a lot of the bad. We talked about the defensive problems with him, and it really has to get a lot better, particularly if he wants to get where he wants to go, because NBA evaluators are going to sit down and watch this tape and wonder, all right, who the heck does he guard at the next level? You don't necessarily have to be an elite defender if you can score the ball, but if you are a complete liability on that end, that does limit how valuable your scoring ability can be. And he was a turnstile in this game. He's capable with his length to be an impact player on the defensive end of the ball. Obviously, he's been rebounding the ball really well this way, but he has to get better. Some of it's effort, some of it's just, I think, as he continues to develop strength and conditioning wise, athletic wise, get a little bit more pop in there, a little bit more strength in his legs. He'll be able to slide his feet a little bit better. But there were so many times where he just got caught flat-footed or just died on the screen.
Some growing pains, literally and figuratively, some growing pains.
And he had a bucket, or he had a chance, kind of that little up and under. I forgot at what point that was, but where it could have really helped Nebraska seal the game. Just missed it. Obviously, he missed that free throw that could have won them the game as well. He had the layup again that could have won them the game at the end of 3 overtime. And he tweeted out, "Proud of the way we fought, fellas. On me. On to the next." And I mean, that's good to see a young kid like that taking accountability. And I'm sure there's a lot from this game that he'll be able to sit down and watch and learn from, because again, he showed how special he can be, but he also showed all the areas that he has a long way to go. And so to see how he bounces back both mentally and physically from such a taxing game will be interesting on Saturday for sure.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen all sorts of flashes from Bryce so far. We've like you said, we've seen the good, we've seen the bad, we've seen the inside game. We haven't quite seen the outside game. We've seen what it could be, but some of those moves he was using to get to the rim in that first half. I mean, that was next level. next level type stuff. But I mean, it's got to be, you got to show the entire package. You got to show all the tools. But yeah, his length, his movement, to get to the rim. I thought I had a front row seat to a pretty good finisher at the rim with JPJ there for a couple years. But some of the stuff Bryce was doing tonight, I mean, that was wildly impressive.
Yeah, and also, and speaking of impressive, I thought for long stretches of that game, that was the best Alonzo Verge has been at Nebraska. That first half, the first 30 minutes or so of that game when Nebraska had built up that lead, he was phenomenal. He had a couple of bad turnovers early on as they were kind of figuring out the press and adjusting to their length and activity. After that, he really settled in. He had, I think, 12, 5, and 4 in the first half. He finished with 25 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 turnovers, but 2 steals. And Nebraska was +6 with him on the court. He fouled out late, unfortunately. But at that point, the game was already essentially over anyway. But he had some really long stretches there where he was as good as anybody on the court, not named Sebron. But he also, we're seeing again where his lack of size at the rim really hurts him when he puts his head down and decides, I'm going to go attack no matter what. He was 11 for 23 from the field. And most of that wasn't necessarily he kept the kind of mid-range attempts down pretty well. A lot of that was at the rim, and there were some challenge ones. Obviously, he got fouled on that one that obviously should have been a call, but 11 for 23 when most of your looks are at the rim and only 4 free throw attempts, that's just not going to get it done. And we've seen him be low efficiency player throughout his career, and I think that's part of it. So he really does need to continue to learn, all right, what's a good shot for me and what's not. If I'm not going to be able to hit these contested shots, he got blocked a couple of times. Like, if you can't hit those shots, you've got to jump stop and make a play for somebody else. He's got the vision to do it. He's quick enough to get into the paint. It doesn't always have to be a shot. There was a bad one late where Nebraska no numbers. It's in semi-transition, bringing it up. I think Nebraska had the lead at that point. And instead of pulling it out or looking for somebody else as a trailer or anything like that, he decided to push it himself, went in. I don't remember if he got blocked or if he just missed it or whatever, but it's possessions like that ultimately tank his overall efficiency and kind of hurt the team despite all the positive things he's able to do. So in the South Dakota game, it was kind of a reversion back to where he was previously. He only played 16 minutes in that game. He had 5 assists, but 2 turnovers, was 1 of 7 from the field. And Fred Hoiberg kind of pulled him. Kobe Webster came in and ran the point for most of that game, despite not playing well or shooting well himself. Webster finished 3 of 10 from the field, but he played 29 minutes and was +13. So the offense worked a little bit better with him out there, even though he wasn't hitting shots himself. So I feel it looks like it's going to be kind of a push and pull situation with Hoiberg and Verge all season long. But the more good Verge they can get, the better the chance they'll have to compete with the likes of Indiana, obviously, and then Michigan coming up. If we want to kind of look ahead to that one, because we probably won't record until after that game. That'll be a Tuesday home game.
Can probably use this as our weekly trip around the Big Ten, our quick little trip around the Big Ten. If you had told me that 8 games into the season, Nebraska was going to have the same amount of losses as Michigan, going into the year, I would be thrilled. But after tonight, both teams are sitting at 3 losses, and a game that, when we first looked at the schedule and in the first episode of this podcast, we said, games you're looking forward to. We probably were expecting Michigan to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 team coming into Lincoln. They now have 3 losses, and they probably won't be ranked next Tuesday when they come here to face Nebraska. They lost tonight to North Carolina to go with their previous 2 losses to Arizona and Seton Hall. I have not watched, I haven't watched much of Michigan this year. I've heard their offense doesn't look great, which is kind of troubling against North Carolina, who had some of the worst defensive statistics in the ACC. Coming into tonight, so I'll have to go check that game out. Looking towards next week, probably the biggest story from Big Ten ACC Challenge Week, the Ohio State upset over Duke last night. Still trying to process how Ohio State won that game. They outscored Duke 41-23 in the second half. Looked like Duke, had that game in hand as late as the under 8, media timeout. And then they just kind of stopped doing what they had been doing. And Ohio State, they were down 3 pretty important players. Seth Towns, the Harvard transfer. I forget the other 2 guys. Who are the other 2 guys?
Justice Suing. Who was a double-digit scorer for them last year. And then was it Eugene Brown?
I think you're. I think so.
The other one.
I think you're right. So they were down. Guard. They were down 3 pretty key guys, and they had the number 1 team in the country coming off a big win over Gonzaga, and Duke was undefeated and ranked number 1 for all of one day, and. So that's
they get a hold on to that ranking until Monday, but still.
They do. But as a result, warn your children, prepare your families for the inevitable force that will be Purdue basketball, assuming the number 1 rank in the country for the first time in school history. They roll Florida State at Mackey Arena 93-65. And that just they Purdue in my time watching the Big Ten, they're always, it feels like Purdue's always missing something. They aren't this year. No. They've got all the pieces possible to make a deep run, and they are terrifying. I'm going to be very honest. They are terrifying.
Yeah. That is the key. Like, you look, this team is so well constructed. Obviously, it starts with Zach Edey's the 7'4" monster in the middle who's taken a huge leap as a sophomore and has supplanted an all Big Ten player in Trayvion Williams as the starting 5. Trayvion's been a really good player for Purdue for a long time. I think he might have been a preseason All-American of some sort, depending on where you looked. And he's coming off the bench and playing kind of limited minutes because Edey has been so unstoppable. And the offense makes him so unstoppable because they have they basically spread the floor with shooters with Sasha Stefanovic and Isaiah Thompson, the PJ Thompson's brother. And then you've got a freak athlete in Jaden Ivey as kind of your primary initiator. And then you've got a talented freshman in First as the kind of the skilled power forward playing alongside Edey. And you've got a couple of good role players coming off the bench as well. So it's just a really well-constructed team. Some of the passes that Trayvion Williams made in just the brief stretch that I watched them the other day against Florida State were just absurd. And that makes him so dangerous where Ivey can kind of initiate things himself as kind of the lead ball handler, whether it's in transition or in the half court. Still not a great threat from the perimeter, but he can hit shots at least. And then he is just so athletic going to the rim. But then you can kind of invert the offense and get the ball to Williams, whether it's in the high post or the low post. And then Ivey becomes deadly as a cutter off the ball as well. So that is just so tough to defend. So Purdue is going to be a problem all season long. I was kind of a little hesitant just based on them being just okay last year. And obviously I think they lost in the first round, right, to Western Michigan or
North Texas.
Another green, some green team. And so I was like, yeah, obviously I know Ivey was really athletic and Williams and Edey, but I was just kind of waiting to see, like, all right, are they going to be able to make the leap? And boy, did they. So yeah, that they're going to be tough. Fortunately, Nebraska has a few games to kind of ease into Big Ten play before they end up facing Purdue at some point. But yeah, that's going to be a tough one.
I think Nebraska also only gets Purdue once, and they have to go to Mackey. So that's what we call a scheduled loss. That is a scheduled loss. Pre-plan. As someone who made the trip to Mackey Arena once upon a time, that's my personal favorite Big Ten venue. When that place gets loud. And where the visiting team bench is in that arena, right next to the student section, which is filled from the rail to the top of the arena, it can escalate quick in there. And I'm going to assume Purdue's still going to be a top 5 team when Nebraska goes in there. I think they play them in January. I've got the schedule pulled up. They actually, they play them in January. They play them on a Friday night at 5:30. That place is going to be jumping. And, enough about Purdue.
Yeah.
Big game Friday night for them, though. Iowa coming into Mackey, undefeated at 7-0. That's probably the most intriguing game this weekend in terms of the Big Ten. Even though it could easily get ugly because Purdue is Purdue. Expect a heavy dose of the Murray brothers for the Hawkeyes and Keegan and Chris Murray. Keegan Murray is averaging 24.5 points a game on 61% shooting. He's pretty good. He's pretty good.
So I remember seeing the Murrays on the grassroots circuit. They were playing for the second Iowa Barnstormers team the same year that Ed Chang and AJ Green and Joey Hauser and all those guys were on the top Barnstormers team. So guy like Keegan and Chris, they both went, I think, to IMG for a prep year before kind of earning the offer from Iowa. And Keegan was kind of a low minutes, kind of low role superstar type. Like he was really effective in his role as a freshman last year. And this year he's just absolutely broken out. It's kind of like a 6'8" power wing. He's able to kind of do whatever he wants out there on the court right now. And obviously Jordan Bohannon back for his 6th year of eligibility. He's already earned the broken the Big Ten career 3-pointers record. So that it'll be the first test for Iowa, really. I mean, they've done a good job, but they haven't faced anybody like Purdue. So we'll see how they handle that, particularly inside. See how their big men hold up against Edey and Williams. But yeah, kind of circling back, congrats to the Big Ten for winning the Big Ten ACC Challenge. I think that Ohio State went over Duke, played a big part of it, and that was a just ice cold water in veins. Pull-up jumper from E.J. Liddell is what sealed the victory for Ohio State there. That's basically the only play of that game that I saw. But that was a tough hit. He hit it when the team needed him most, and that's kind of what superstars need to do. And circling back to Michigan here with Nebraska facing them on Tuesday next week. Obviously, I think everybody knows Hunter Dickinson at this point. He hasn't really made any kind of leap. He's been about the same player that he was last year, about 15 a game, 8 boards.
I am just now seeing the box score from that game tonight. Oh, boy.
4 points and 4 fouls in 18 minutes against a pretty big North Carolina front line. Obviously, Armando Bacot and Dawson Garcia, and they got Brady Manick coming off the bench as the stretch 4. So they've got some big bodies to throw at him. But, yeah, that was a problem because right now I think Juwan Howard put a lot of his eggs into the Caleb Houston basket, the 5-star wing from Montverde, who has not played well, and that's putting it lightly. I mean, he was kind of recruited as a sharpshooter, and he is shooting 25.8% from 3. He is averaging under 9 points a game. He had 8 points on 2 of 9 shooting against North Carolina. So Musa Diabate is doing some interesting things. He was the other 5-star. I saw they moved him into the starting lineup against North Carolina, kind of match up with that bigger team, and with Brandon Johns Jr. kind of struggling to make a leap as a starter this year. And Devonte Jones, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, I believe, he's just been okay. He has not been the difference maker. He's been solid, but he hasn't been as good as Mike Smith was for them last year as a grad transfer. And so right now, Eli Brooks is kind of getting his buckets. Hunter Dickinson is doing about what he did last year, but beyond that, they just haven't had anybody that's really stepped up and replaced what they lost last year, because obviously Franz Wagner was a lottery pick. Isaiah Livers was a really good college player. Shaundi Brown off the bench as a transfer was huge for them. And then Mike Smith as well at the point guard spot. So I was somewhat high on the roster coming into the year. I thought they had a chance. They were in that top tier alongside Purdue, and basically none of the newcomers have really made the impact that I think Juwan Howard was hoping for when he landed the best recruiting class in the Big Ten.
I think, didn't he have the number one class in the country too? Didn't he have the no? It was
Memphis, I believe.
With
the reclass guys, and
but
definitely the best. Yeah, definitely the best one in the Big Ten.
Yep, absolutely. And then he got his big contract extension, and their offense has just looked broken ever since.
Shooting 29% from three.
Yeah, that's not great. Not great when you're losing by almost 20 at the Dean Dome to a Carolina team that was either last or second to last in almost all defensive categories in the ACC when they hadn't played any, many power teams during the season yet. That's not too promising. So Michigan probably going to fall out of the rankings. Not probably. They will fall out of the rankings by the time they come to PBA next Tuesday for a 6:30 game on ESPN2, the rare Nebraska basketball ESPN2 appearance.
All right. So that's kind of a look ahead. We mentioned, I think, Keisei Tominaga's emergence has been the biggest deal from these last two games. Are there any other takeaways that you've seen from the South Dakota and NC State games that we haven't already hit on?
No, I don't. I think the same questions that we talked about last week still remain. It's great. I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing Keisei find his shot. You can tell when the shots are falling, that kid's having the time of his life out there. He's full of energy. He was doing the little hand helicopter after he hit the three for the 4-point play tonight. He's gonna be a big time fan favorite by the time. I mean, he already is, but by the time he's done here, people are gonna love him even more than they already do. I think, Verge, I really liked what I saw from him tonight. He's just got to keep figuring it out. I mean, that especially while they're waiting for Trader McGowan's to rehab, Verge figuring it out is kind of going to be the path of this team figuring it out as a unit, especially on offense. So, I like what I saw. I like a lot of what I saw tonight. But when it comes down to it, the biggest things are the defensive end, the glass, and just, killer instinct is such a cliche way to put it. But what we saw in those bye games that, were a little too close, teams like Tennessee State hanging around, teams like South Dakota hanging around for a little bit, is they haven't really shown an ability to put teams away. Yeah. And, they had that was the biggest thing that stuck out to me, was they had a double-digit lead with under 10 minutes to go, and they just they got to have the ability to put teams away, especially if they want to steal some wins in the Big Ten. You're going to have to be able to seize your opportunity and finish.
Yeah, and I somewhat like if you're going to face a tough stretch like this, I like the way it's set up, because at the time when I was kind of looking at the season as a whole, it seemed like these were in order of difficulty. So NC State was probably the lesser of the four teams that Nebraska was playing during this stretch. And then it felt like each game got tougher. Obviously, you go to Indiana, and then you face a highly ranked Michigan team at home. And then you go down to Atlanta, which is essentially a home game for Auburn. I'm sure there'll be plenty of Auburn fans in the stands down there in Atlanta. But that's a really tough team, and they've got a top 5 pick in Jabari Smith down there to deal with. Obviously, with the way Michigan's playing, it's kind of hard to assess how difficult that game is going to be. But this is a big loss, because I think this was the easiest win, I think, of these 4 games, even seeing what happened in Michigan tonight, because
Absolutely.
I don't think Nebraska is going to be able to do the same things that North Carolina did to them. So this is another huge missed opportunity because of what it could mean for this team, both in terms of securing a win and for your confidence, and just knowing hey, we beat another high major team. They still don't have a high major win. They're 0-2 against, they lost to Creighton, and now they lost to NC State. And now you've got 3 more in a row coming up before a couple more bye games. And then you dive into Big Ten play, where it's all high majors the rest of the way. And that stretch is going to be tough.
3 high majors, 1 bye game, another high major in K-State coming in, but not a very highly rated or regarded high major, but still a Big 12 team.
Yeah.
But and then the rubber hits the road, like you said, with Big Ten plays. So those are our thoughts on a whale of a basketball game, a little look at the big picture. Tell the folks what's coming at Hale Varsity. Shout out to the women's team. They got a win tonight in Winston-Salem against Wake Forest. They're now 8-0. Plenty of space left on the bandwagon to hop on with us. Check out Steve Mark's coverage, his gamer from tonight and all that stuff. But tell the folks what else is coming from the good folks at Hale Varsity.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk to Steve about getting him on the pod either next week or the week after. It's kind of talk about this team getting off to a start. But in the meantime, follow his coverage at halevarsity.com. This weekend for me, I will have NCAA volleyball coverage. Nebraska is hosting the first weekend here. So the Huskers will take on the Fighting Camels of Campbell on Friday night. And then if they win that, they'll get the winner of K-State and Florida State on Saturday night. So be a busy weekend of volleyball coverage for me. And then right back into the football grind with that home game against Michigan next Tuesday. So stay locked to Hale Varsity. The rest of the staff will have some postseason football thoughts, I'm sure. We'll continue our coverage of our respective basketball beats, and I'll close out the volleyball season here with the tournament for as long as Nebraska remains alive.
And you talked some high school hoops with Damon Benning this week. Touched on the preview of high school hoops on Nebraska Preps post game. We got the season starting up here tomorrow, so just what the two of us needed: more hoops for us to watch and intake. But like Jacob said, tune in to the various beats for the happenings in the basketball world, the podcast network, support the good folks at Hale Varsity. I personally took advantage of the excellent Cyber Monday deal to become a Hale Varsity subscriber. So while it may not be Cyber Monday anymore, you should too.
Yep. Just go check out our website. We've got the subscription options there for you. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Padilla. You can follow Bigelow. Go ahead, give your handle.
Follow me on Twitter at the Bigelow. You can go make the _Bigelow, Bigelow. You can go make fun of the multiple GIFs that I tweeted during the 3-hour-long basketball, display that we saw tonight.
3 hours and 23 minutes is the official game time on the box score. So long game. It's almost 2 full games there, but hopefully we will have 2 full games to recap for you next week. So again, stay tuned, Hale Varsity, and until then, hopefully you guys can see some good basketball this weekend.
A Hurrdat Media Production.